Yeah, live.
Hi, good evening, everyone, and welcome to day 6 of MLRW, organized by IITG.ai, the Machine Learning Club of IIT Guwahati. Over these past 6 days, we have had a diverse speakers from diverse backgrounds. Today, we have with us Somsubhra Gan Choudhuri. He's the co-founder and current CEO of AI Palette. AI Palette is a Singapore-based startup. It works with predictive analytics platform that spots emerging consumer trends in the food and beverage sector and in the FMCG sector. He was also awarded the top 50 innovator at the World Innovation Congress. As ML enthusiasts, we are all familiar with implementing cutting edge papers and trying new innovative approaches to models. However, seldom we are able to find practical monetizable use cases for them in the real world. Today's talk is about exactly that. Today, we will be discussing commercialization of AI, its challenges and opportunities. Over to you, sir.
Thanks a lot, Rishan, and thanks a lot, IITG.ai, for inviting me for this wonderful talk. And good evening to all of you who have joined in. So, as Rishan has introduced the topic, so without further ado, I'll dive straight in. So, a little bit about AI Palette and what we do, because I'll be drawing very much from my experiences of building AI Palette and commercializing a solution for the FMCG industry to talk more about the challenges and the opportunities. So at AI Palette, we help the CPG companies or the consumer packaged good companies with the new product innovation by analyzing the big data around food to identify and predict the consumer trends in real time. So, for example, if a beverage company wants to launch a new juice in a market like Indonesia, our platform will tell them what kind of juice they should launch next by using uh, AI and machine learning. So, for the talk today, I'll first start with the challenges before I dive into the opportunities. So, when you talk about the challenges, we know that AI, it takes quite a bit of time before it's ready to be commercialized. And the longer the time, the higher the risk of the product getting trapped in the valley of death. So, what is the valley of death? So, if you look into the diagram over here, we start this building the solution with research. So, on the x-axis, you have the time that it takes, and on the y-axis, we have the money or the cumulative profit that comes from that solution. Now, you might be commercializing the solution either for a big company as part of a team, or you might be commercializing as part of your own startup. So it is very important that as a startup, we don't get, or a team, we don't get trapped into this valley of death. So while we start building an AI product, we start with the research, which takes quite a bit of time. And after that, the development of the product starts. And by the time the product launch happens, it takes almost one third of the time. And once the product, the beta version of the product is launched into the market, it takes a little bit of time to get commercialized. So by commercialized, I mean when the product is generating revenue. That means we have customers who are actually paying to use that product, which is a very good sign and a very important sign when it comes to the commercialization of the product. But from commercialization till the product breaks even, we are constantly burning money. And if the product or the business is not able to reach success as a business, so that is the point where the cash burnt and the cash earned has not neutralized, then the product dies. And a lot of startups or a lot of corporate teams which have been set up to build AI solution, they get trapped in this valley of death. So how can we overcome this particular valley of death? And there is no one right answer. In order to overcome the valley of death, we need to be really flexible. And because there is not one way to commercialize the AI capabilities. To give an example of like how we did and overcome that valley of death was that we knew that to build our SaaS platform, it is going to take us 1 year. But for that 1 year, we cannot be earning any money. So while the team on one hand worked on building the sophisticated platform, on the other hand, we worked with the customer to execute their problems on a project basis. So that helped us in two ways. The first, it helped us in getting some revenue while the product was getting ready and the platform was getting ready to be launched. On the other hand, uh, it also helped us to learn from our customer what are the problems and the challenges that they are facing and how the solution is helping them to uh, overcome that particular challenge. And along the process, we learned what are the features which are really important to the customer, things we had not anticipated before, and that really helped us in further refining our product. And by the time the product hit the market, it was already quite developed and solving a major problem for the customer. And also by earning some money, we extended our runway. And that really helped us in overcoming the valley of death. And we have seen different teams taking different approaches when it comes to overcoming the value of death. So, for example, I have seen teams while they are trying to build their SaaS platform, they started commercializing by selling it through an API. So, the key message here is that in the beginning, we should be really flexible and find a way how we can uh, increase the runway by commercialization faster the solution. So now, from the value of death, which was among the economic factors, which is one of the challenges, let's move on to the second challenge, which is slightly different compared to this economic challenge. So the second challenge is around the mindset of the people. Now, the mindset of the people is different because of probably what they see in the popular culture. And by people, I typically mean people who don't come from an AI or a data science background. But these are the people who would either sit in the top management of a company of which you might be part of a team, or this could be the people who are your customers and you're trying to go and sell them an AI solution. Now, as I'm mentioning about the pop culture, probably we have to blame a little bit of the Hollywood movies who have always shown us very sophisticated AI. On one hand, we have the Terminators who are about to destroy humanity. On the other hand, they show the sophisticated robots, which is going to take away job from the people. But we know that reality today, AI is very far from that. So, how do we manage the unrealistic expectations that people have from artificial intelligence? So, the way to deal with is that to have a really realistic chat with the key stakeholders, explain to them what is possible today with AI, what is possible in the next immediate future with AI, and what are the things which AI will take probably long term to solve. That candid and expectations setting chat is really, really important because these are the stakeholders who have the money and who have the budget. And if the expectations are not set right in the beginning, then towards the end, when you are building the solution and the results are not matching the expectations they would have had set in their mind before, it's going to result in unsavory situations and problems. So the key part here is to really set the expectations right. Now, once you have had a discussion with the key stakeholders, the top management, be it from the customer or if you're part of a team of within a big organization, the next challenge comes with the people who will actually be using that solution. These are the people who a lot of time shows resistance to AI. And the resistance to it comes because of two reasons. A, because they are scared that AI might replace their jobs. They are scared that if they help in adapting an AI solution, tomorrow it might be replacing them. But as I have mentioned that AI today cannot replace human one to one. So here we need to really explain to them that AI really helps them in doing their job better. So it is just another tool in their portfolio, which will help them to increase their efficiency beyond the tools that they might have used, like the Excel sheet or some tool built in the 90s. This is going to significantly help them in doing their job better. It will only give them a direction, but at the end of the day, they are the ultimate decision maker. So this is the kind of a comfort that needs to be given to these people who will be actually using the solution or helping implementing the solution. And the second reason why a lot of time this resistance comes is because of the human nature, that we don't like change. Probably the only human being who likes change is a baby whose diaper is wet. They are the only ones who will be crying for a change. Every one of us, we don't like change. But again, explaining how this change is going to help them can really help these people who were against AI to someone who turn becoming an advocate. And that we realized in the early days when we are trying to sell our solution to some of the world's largest uh, FMCG companies. We could see that the people who at the ground level are expected to use the solution was not very receptive of it. And that really led us to a problem, because if nobody's using the solution, how do you ask the customer to pay the money? So then we changed our approach completely when it comes to selling or proposing the solution to the customer, where the discussion is less around the technology and more in terms of like how it can help them in solving those problems and how it can help them in making their life better. And once you have the people who are supposed to use the solution with a mindset that they understand, okay, how the AI helps them in doing their job better and how it helps them to perform and excel, then they will adapt it. And there is another small challenge when it comes to the overall resistance to AI is the black box part of it. So you might build a very sophisticated solution which is black box, but if you are not able to explain to the people who are supposed to use the solution how the algorithm works, then it becomes very difficult to convince the stakeholders that okay, this is something that they should be adapting. And that is a challenge that I have seen over and over time again. So that's where it becomes really important to explain how the AI works in solving the problem in a very simple manner, using the language in a way that even somebody who has never had any background or any introduction to AI or data science, they are able to understand and think, okay, what they are saying is logical, makes sense to me. So probably if the AI is doing it, then probably it will be doing it right. So, all right. So we covered a little bit around the topics first on the challenges that come around the business and the economic part. We talked a little bit about the challenges which comes from the human part. Now let's move on to the challenges which is a little bit more technical. So what it is called the long tail problem. So the long tail problem here is that to solve 90% of the problems, you'd have the data. But when it comes to the rare event or the edge cases, the data availability becomes very, very scarce. And what it means is that the event may be scarce, but the data that is needed to train for that particular event and validate that event is exponentially higher compared to the other data sets. And as a result of it, the cost for building the model and training it to handle such long tail problems becomes exponentially high. So the graph that you see here takes an example from self-driving cars. So when you look into the probability of the events, the ones which higher probability are the ones which we come across when we are doing everyday driving. But as the event probability decreases, the instances or the availability of that data really decreases. And with that, the cost of acquiring that data goes up significantly. And let me give an example of such instance. So, for example, if if there is a self-driving car on the road and there are a bunch of people uh, who are dressed in a costume of say rhinoceros or tiger and crossing the road, the car will not know how to react to it. And and that's a challenge because it might not have seen any data like this in the past. But this rare events can often be life or death situation, and that's where it becomes really challenging on how we deal with these long tail problems. And even to draw an example of what we faced at AI Pilot when we were building the solution to predict the food trends was when it came to events which were not very common. So, for example, how do you account for an event like COVID 19, which came uh, 2 years back? The only other event which had some sort of resemblance with COVID 19 was Spanish flu, which happened in 1930 or 1940, almost 80 years back. So there was hardly any data around it. How do we account for that and predict how COVID 19 is going to affect the food preferences of the consumers? Or another very recent example is like with the imminent war in Ukraine with Russia, the potato prices have gone up significantly because that is the region where potato is produced. And as a result of that, there is a shortage of potatoes and French fries in McDonald's and KFC. Now, that kind of scenario is very difficult to predict using AI because such events are very rare and very unpredictable. Uh, so, here is a very nice quote by the director of engineering from OMO, the driverless car division of Google, where he said that when you are 90% done, you still have 90% more to go. And that really talks about the challenges of the long tail problem, where on one hand, you might have uh, solved 90% of the scenarios that are there, but the last 10% is still there. And because of that, you are still not able to commercialize the solution. And the best example are driverless cars. When we started talking about AI 5 years back, everybody talked about, okay, we are going to see driverless cars on our streets. But as we know, it's still at a stage where it's as a proof of concept or there are trials going on, and we still don't see it being commercialized. And you know what is happening as a result of that? The time to commercialize is taking longer, and the companies are still trapped in that valley of death. As long as the money is coming from the investor, they're able to continue their research. But moment the money from the investors or the company upper management dries out, they have to stop building the solution and they are dead. Now, moving on from the technical challenges, the other challenges that we see often with AI is that the how do you deal with the legal scenarios which are not anticipated because the laws that were created for the humans. So if we have to talk, and if we have to continue the example of the driverless cars, so the driving laws were created for the humans. So there is a law of, when somebody meets with an accident and the driver is human, how it should be dealt with. The driving laws have not been created to deal with AI. So how do you deal with the situation where the AI makes a mistake? It hits somebody. Who is responsible for it? Is it the person who owns that driverless car, or is it the company which has created that particular model, or is it the department which has developed the AI? And those are the areas that needs to be sorted out before some of these solutions could be commercialized and adopted widely. And the other example could be like, how do we deal with the biases that comes with the AI? So, for example, if a human being makes a decision which is preferring a particular type of race or a particular type of community, we now have the laws to deal with it. But how do you deal with when the AI is making that decision? And one of the examples that I like is that when Microsoft was building an AI solution to predict the outcome or give a verdict for a legal case, because as you know that the cases has a backlog of huge number of cases, not just in India but across the globe. So if AI is able to go through the case and replace a human judge and give the decisions, we can very quickly get rid of the backlog. So what Microsoft did is that they took one court which had a lot of cases for the last 50 to 60 years, trained the algorithm. They have the verdicts also to train the algorithms on how to make the decisions. But after the training was done, and when they asked the AI to make that decision, they realized that it is making the decisions which are having a bias towards a particular race and a particular community. And when they dug deeper, they realized that in that particular court, one particular judge, his decisions were very biased towards one particular race and community, and they would penalize them. So that led to sort of shelving that particular project and scrapping it completely, even though the objective was something where there was a use case which was very pertinent and it needed a solution to be brought into the market. So this brings me towards the end of the challenges that comes with AI. I touched upon on the topics of the challenges when it comes to the economics of building an AI solution and commercializing it. I talked a little bit about the challenges that comes with the humans and the stakeholders when it comes to the adoption of AI, and then I touched upon on a little bit of the technical challenges and also the legal and the policy guidelines. Now let's move on to the opportunity part of the AI. And when I'm going to talk about opportunity, I'm not going to talk in terms of what you would read in the McKinsey reports that, okay, AI is going to be this billion industry. I'm going to talk about what are the opportunity that are there when you are trying to commercialize an AI solution, either as part of a team within a big organization, or if you are having your own startup. So one thing that you should realize when you're trying to build an AI solution, that the value is really in the use case rather than the technology. And why that is important is because the stakeholders or the customers, they don't really care what is the technology that is driving that AI, as long as it helps them in doing their job better or solving the problem that they have. And that is a learning that was very important to us in the early days, because when you would go and pitch to the customers, so you talk about our own proprietary algorithm, pending algorithm that we have built, how it uses the latest sophisticated technology and the latest advancement that has come in the field of AI. But we very quickly realized that when we are having that discussion, we would lose the stakeholders unless they were somebody who would come with a background in data science or AI. What the stakeholders really care is about what use case it is solving and what is the value it is bringing it to them. And that understanding really helps because a particular ML technique can be used across multiple industries. So what you are doing for, say, is something like healthcare can be also used, a computer vision technology for healthcare can be equally used for a computer vision technology for agriculture. So it's more about understanding what is the problem and then figuring out what technology can really solve that problem, rather than taking the approach that, okay, I have this technology and let's find a problem to solve it. Now, with so continuing the discussion a little bit more in terms of the use cases and how to further find the value of solving it using the technology, what is really important is to find a domain and a problem for which a solution is not there in the market today. And the way to do it is working very closely with a domain expert. Uh, and the domain expert becomes almost as important as the data science or the AI people that are out there, because the domain experts can really give insights to the AI and the data science team. What is the problem? How it is done by the humans today, and then can give them a direction in terms of thinking about it. And then the AI team can figure out, okay, what kind of technology that we need to use to solve that problem. So let me give an example of like how we did at AI Pilot. So when me and my co-founder Himanshu met, so I come with a domain background in the FMCG industry on the food side, and Himanshu, he comes with a background of finance, where he previously worked at Visa Data Labs and used AI and machine learning to identify the payment trends. So I shared with him that in the FMCG industry, there is a problem when it comes to identifying the trends. Using a traditional way to identify trends, it takes around 3 to 6 months. Sounds ridiculous, right? But that's how the industry works. So if they have to identify a trend, it would take them 3 to 6 months to identify the trend. And even when they identify the trend, it would be more like the trend which is as of today. It cannot really predict what it will be 6 months from now or 1 year from now. And on the other hand, Himanshu has used the advanced learning techniques where he identified the payment trends, and that really helped. And he knew how he can use the similar kind of technology and a similar kind of problem to solve this problem in a very different industry like FMCG, which has not been solved by anybody else. So that's how we found our niche. And also, the way to go about finding the niche, it's not always that you would have a co-founder or somebody in the team who comes with a domain expertise. So in that particular case, you need to work really closely with the domain experts and ask them open-ended questions about how the industry works, what are the challenges that they face in their particular industry, how they are solving the problems today, uh, why the solutions that they're using is not giving the results that they need. So those are the kind of open-ended questions which will open up to quite a number of problems that the industry faces. So you might go hoping that you will get one particular problem that is there in that particular industry, but you might end up coming back with 5 or 7 different problems that is there in the industry. And then it's up to you to choose which is the one which matches your skill set of AI. So if you're an NLP guy, which problem you can solve using NLP, or you're somebody with computer vision, which problem can be solved using computer vision. But the most important thing to remember is that don't go and tell them that, do you think it's a good idea that I can use AI to solve this? Because by nature, people would give you a favorable response that, yeah, it's a brilliant idea, because nobody wants to say no on your face that the idea doesn't really make sense. So that's where go without any preconceived notions, ask them open-ended question in terms of, and try to really understand how their business works and what is their biggest pain point, what problem keeps them up at night, and that will give you an understanding of what the problems that they have. And when you have talked with a significant number of people, around 30 to 40 of people, you will see a pattern where you would see that majority of the problems that are common are the ones that you need to go after it. And most often than not, you find the niche in old traditional industries. So I'm not talking about finance or healthcare, which is the go-to industries when it comes to AI solutions, because those are the areas which are already crowded as of now. There are a lot of companies who are doing significant work in those industries. You need to go to industries and find industries. If you're building your own solution, or building your own startup, to find an old and traditional industry where people are not paying attention to. So they'll probably be very boring, like FMCG, retail, or something else. So let me give an example of what one of my friends did. So he built an AI solution for the shipping industry where he identified what are the risks that the ship might have. And how this started it out was that his co-founder was someone who was an US Marine. So, and after he retired from US Marine, he had his own security establishment where he would provide people who would guard the oil tankers or the ships which will go through the Suez Canal, through the areas which are infested with pirates. And he knew that when it comes to the security or the risk of these ships, there is no solution which helps the ship companies to identify how they can predict which ship might be attacked by the pirates next. But they had a lot of data in terms of like which are the ships which were attacked, and when they were attacked, and what was the situation in which that hijack or the kidnapping took place. So with that particular insight that this is a problem, his co-founder, who was a guy who worked on risk analysis in a different domain, he was able to quickly find a solution to identify risk for these ships that are out there. And these are the ship companies which are carrying uh, cargo worth millions of dollars. So for them to pay uh, uh, a, a big size of money to identify the risk was not a very big problem for them. And from identifying the risk when it comes to the pirates, they moved into other sort of risk as well. So, and the latest thing that they did was to also identify how the ships are at risk of COVID-19. And that way they built and established themselves as one of the key players in an industry like shipping, uh, which is a very big and traditional industry, but nobody was doing much when it comes to AI solution for that industry. And that's how they become one of the dominant players and commercialized a technology. Let me move a little bit deeper in terms of like how you can go about finding the niche when it comes to the different use cases that are out there for different categories, and what it means in terms of the different AI technologies that could be used. So here it's about like how we can find the product market fit. So when I say product, so it's could be the AI technology like computer vision, deep learning, machine learning, or NLP, and then find for which market and for what use case you can solve that problem. So because it's not just important to be able to analyze, say, a voice and identify where somebody, what are the emotions that they're going through or not. It is more important to find out, okay, what problems it solves for the industry that you are working on or for the industry that you are targeting. So if somebody had to build an AI solution for the FMCG and retail, these would be some of the use cases and the potential AI methods that could be used. So the first use case is around trend prediction. So this is what we do at AI Palette. So how the companies can identify the next big trend when it comes to food and beverage, or it could be personal care items. And the AI methods that could be used are natural language processing and computer vision. So as you can see, NLP and computer vision, it's uh, could be used for trend prediction, or it could be used for the second use case, which is concept selection. So this is where the company, they need to launch a product into the market, and they need to really identify which concept will work with the consumers. The traditional method is to do an A/B testing where you show it to 100 people and ask them what they would prefer. But using AI, you can really fast track the process and help the companies decide what problem they can solve into the market. So the benefit for the companies are that A, it reduces time, and B, it would be cheaper compared to doing and reaching out to a lot of people and organizing that sort of studies. The other use case could be in terms of creation of formula. So how you can generate optimum product formulation to reduce trial, and for that you can use machine learning. An example of a similar application and a similar use case in a different industry is the aerospace industry. As you know that it takes a lot of money to build an aeroplane, right? And Boeing or Airbus, they cannot go on building like aeroplane after aeroplane to figure out which is the best aeroplane. So what they do is that they try to simulate and predict what would be the best optimum combination of parts and technology to create the right aeroplane. So can you take a similar approach to create the formulas, which reduces the trial that they need to do in labs, and create a product which is optimum? So thus helping the company to save the cost of doing the trials and also help them fast track the process. Another example could be in terms of, say, sales forecasting, predict sales of items. Uh, Very similar to another example in another industry like finances, like where they are predicting the stock prices, and basis that the traders, they are deciding what stocks to buy or sell. Another example could be in terms of where we can use the natural language generation to generate the advertisements. So today, when it comes to the online advertisements, you need to generate a lot of ads, either through text, image, or video ads. Most of it is today done by an army of people, which results in ads which are very boring or repetitive. But by using NLG, can you help in generating image and video ads which are much more relevant for the person who is looking at the ads, because you would already have the persona of the person. So for example, if I'm visiting a site, and if you know that, okay, I like watching cricket and F1 sports, and I prefer colorful stuff, what kind of ads you can show me? The other example where computer vision could be used could be in terms of shelf scanning. So, for example, when you walk into a retail store like a big bazaar, you would see the products that they are stacked. But it becomes very difficult for the companies to track how the products are moving, and how the competition have stacked their products. So, for example, when it comes to, say, a category like, say, instant noodles, how has Maggie stacked its product versus not? So that kind of information becomes very valuable for the companies, and the way they do it today is by sending a person who would weekly once go to a store and see how their products are placed. But using computer vision and IoT, can you build a solution to scan it in real time and identify how the products are moving? So this was an example of like how we can use the similar NLP computer vision algorithms to really identify the different use cases for a category like FMCG and retail. But if we go to a different category, a very traditional category like agriculture, you can use the similar type of technology to identify the use case and the application and solve a major problem to commercialize the product. So, for example, for robotic farming, so when you have acres and acres of field, and when it is in developed markets like, say, US, Australia, or New Zealand, manpower is not cheap, and they need machines to cut the crop or to do seeding or weeding. So using computer vision and artificial intelligence, you can really help them to have more efficiency and to reduce the dependence of manpower. On the other hand, we can use the computer vision algorithm to identify the health of a crop. So, a traditional application of computer vision has always been looking into the x-rays to identify whether somebody has cancer or lungs disease or something, or would be to look into the satellite pictures to identify whether it is going to rain or not, or what are the problems, or look into the density of people. But the same principles could be used to solve a very important problem for a traditional industry like agriculture, to identify whether the crops are doing right or not by looking into the colors of the leaves, or if it is developing mold or fungi. The same principle can again be used for soil monitoring. So you can see the color and the texture and the picture of the soil and predict, okay, is this the soil having enough water in it? Do we need to give it more water? Or do we need to not give water this week to make sure that the crops don't have more water or less water? And then, of course, it can look into weather forecasting or predictive analytics to identify and predict how the weather is going to be, or to predict how the environment is going to affect the crop yield. And again, the methods remain same, but what changes are the use cases or the application. And if you are able to nail the use case or the application, commercialization of the AI solution becomes very easy, because not always you need to build a very sophisticated or a deep learning algorithm which might take you a year or two to build and master. And now, when you have identified what is your use case, it is important that you are also able to market it. Now, when it comes to marketing a new solution like AI, not everybody will be ready to adopt it because it's an unproven technology, right? And nobody wants to be the guinea pig here. But there would be people who would be the early adopters and looking to adopt such solutions. So, how do you find those people? So, what we have seen while we are trying to commercialize our solution at AI Pilot, we identified that there are 4 groups of people out there. And when I say groups of people, it's generally the organizations that I'm referring to. So the first type of organizations are the pioneers. So these are the organizations who are the first to identify the value of data, value of AI, and places that they have already adopted AI by either building an in-house team or working with solution providers like say, IBM or Microsoft. So these are the set of people who have understood why AI is important, have already adopted it. So when you are going and having a discussion in terms of like commercializing an AI solution, the discussion is more around how you will do the implementation and what kind of support you need. And that kind of conversations are very easier to have compared to some of the other people. The second group of people are the AI investigators. So they are one step behind the pioneers. So these are the organization, they have understand the implications of AI. So they have said, okay, we have done our research and it makes sense for us that we need to adopt AI. But right now they are in a pilot stage. So they have understood the importance of AI and they are now experimenting how they can adapt it. So this second group is also a pretty decent group of people to go and sell your solution, because they are looking out different solutions and they are trying it out. And the pioneers or the investigators are the ones whom I would suggest to start if you're trying to commercialize a solution from your own startup, or if you are planning to join a big organization and be part of the data science team. Makes sense to be part of the pioneers or the investigators, because there you will have the support of the management and the stakeholders to build your AI solutions and commercialize quickly. If you don't get the pioneers or the investigators, the third group are the experimenters. So these are the people who have seen, okay, my competition has done something with AI. I see everybody talking about AI. Let me also do something about AI. So these are the people who are really, really risky. So risky in the sense that they know that they need to play with AI without really understanding why they need it and how they can use it. And most of the time, these are the people who will engage you in proof of concept or doing some trials with them without really implementing or adapting anything. So if you're trying to commercialize AI, I would suggest that be very careful with this particular group of organizations who are still not clear what they want to do. And the fourth group are the AI laggards. So these are the people who have very little understanding of AI. They don't understand what AI is, and that's why they don't want to adapt AI. And anyway, because these are the peoples who are laggards and they don't want to adopt AI, you'll probably not be having any conversation with them. So the key message from this particular slide is that focus on the pioneers and the investigators, because these are the people who will quickly adopt the solution, give her the required support that need in terms of manpower or budget, and help you quickly get out of the valley of death and bring your product into the market. They would know what are the challenges when it comes to AI, what are the data related challenges, what they need to have to do to have AI as a strategy, how they can streamline the data. So, all the support that you need to build your AI solution and bring it into the market. So, with that, I have come to the end of the presentation. So, if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
Hi, we do not have any questions as of now. There was one question in the chat which went away. So the
Okay.
question was, you mentioned the value of death in the start. So somebody was asking, what is a realistic, like in real time, how much would you expect a startup? Like how long should you continue working on it before it's say doomed or successful, like in like years and months terms?
Okay. That's a very relevant question. So, what I would suggest is to break it down into smaller milestones when it comes to going through the valley of death. So, to identify first what is the beta solution. So, beta solution, and before that, the MVP. So, the MVP doesn't have to be a full fledged solution. And the quicker you are able to validate the MVP, you really know that, okay, this is a solution which has legs and it is going to work in the market. So, an MVP is something which is like the most basic version of the product. So, for example, if you want to build a car, maybe build a push cart with four wheels. So, what is the bare minimum solution for which somebody is going to pay you the money? So, if you are able to sell your MVP to somebody, here the price is immaterial. As long as somebody is pay you some money, you know that there is a need for something like this. And once you have reached that validation, then you can quickly accelerate towards building the beta version of the product. And then once you have built the beta version of the product, you will definitely have some early adapters, because you know that you have solved a solution for which there is a need in the market and people have already paid you even before there was no dashboard or nothing. It was just probably a presentation or just a website and two or three people behind that running the show, which was the case with AI Pilot when we started. So for us, it took us almost a year to build our SaaS platform and bring it to the market. For some companies which are working on fields which has a very strong regulation, like say medical or healthcare, where they need to get an accreditation from a body, it might take slightly longer, like 1 to 2 years. So in situations like that, the best approach would be to get some level of funding or work with somebody who gives you some grant, so that you can extend your runway along the way. Or find some other way of making money by uh, giving your by selling your API. So, for example, if you are building an AI solution where you go through MRI reports and you use it to identify brain tumor or predict brain tumor, maybe you have a very sophisticated computer vision algorithm. Can you use the computer vision algorithm on some other use cases? Like, say, for example, can you use it for the marine sector where they want to see what's under the seabed, where they are trying to look into, say, the oil pipelines or something? I'm just making it up. So that should be the approach when it comes to uh, uh, going out of the value of death.
Yeah, we have one more question. So, according to you right now, which niche sector has the best scope for an AI solution? And do we need subject matter expertise to enter that market?
Okay. Now, that's a very relevant question. So, when it comes to the sectors, so I would first talk about the sectors which are like already having a lot of AI solutions. So, the sectors would be the likes of finance or healthcare, because those were the first two sectors where people went after to build the AI solution because of two reasons. A, there was a lot of data, and B, finance is also one of those sectors where there's a lot of money. But there is money also in the traditional sectors. So, for example, like agriculture is becoming very big, or food is becoming very big, because people have realized that sustainability is really important. So, can you build an AI solution which helps in sustainable production of food, or can it help in reducing the wastage of food? Or it could be other industries, like, say, for example, say shipping or marine, or it be the logistics industries, or could it be the manufacturing industries as well? Can you do something for the factories to increase their efficiency? Or it could be in terms of like how you can help them. Well, predictive maintenance has become quite mainstream now, but again, there could be a use case where it is a particular manufacturing industry where there is no, which has not been tapped for predictive maintenance. The other could be in terms of scheduling the batches. So if you're taking production, how you can plan your production that you have minimum downtime. So those could be some of the industry that comes on top of the mind. Other industries could be in terms of like sports, how you can use AI to help a batsman increase their average. Uh, how can you help somebody to perform better and get more wickets? Can you build an AI solution which can help the bowler to train and reach the same level as someone like Virat Kohli, or say Pat Cummins? So the second question, I think, is around, do we need a subject matter expertise to enter a market? So yes, that's very, very important. If you don't have a subject matter expert in your team, you can overcome it by having an advisor or talking to as many people as possible. So if you are trying to figure out which industry for which you can do it, look into some of the industries where you feel a sort of a, or where you have an access to some experts, and then reach out to them, have the discussion, open-ended discussion. What are their problems that are keeping them up at night? When you talk to 20, 30 people, you will see a pattern in the problems, and you'll be able to see the top three problems and then focus on those.
Yeah, that's it for the questions. Thank you for all our viewers for tuning in. Thank you so much, sir, for taking time out. We know it's very late there, and for having this extremely informative talk. We hope at least some of our viewers benefit from this, and maybe are able to identify some trend in the market and are able to capitalize on it using AI. Thank you so much for your time. Have a good night, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Bye bye.